Hey, this is More Than Velocity. I'm Bart Pear here with Jordan Segura, and today we've got Lou Kolasky on with us. Lou is a MPA affiliated coach up in the Great Lakes region, and he and Jordan have been talking quite a lot about different ways of using arm care and some things he's doing, and it just made sense to kind of get Lou on the podcast and highlight some of those things and just kind of talk. So, Jordan, why don't you kind of explain how much you've been talking with Lou, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, so gosh, Lou, I think we've been talking for a little over 2 years now, and it started
Yeah,
out as a guy who just would call and ask a bunch of questions, and am honestly happy to say that it's turned into a pretty good friendship. He's a guy that I can call with questions, very knowledgeable on pitching, and when it comes to all the coaches that use the system, Lou is honestly probably one of the guys who asks so many questions that he learns more than we even thought we could learn from it. So that's why we want to get him on here, highlight it. He is like a guy willing to experiment and try stuff, but he's going to back it up with data. So he's not just slinging things onto a wall. When he's going to try something, he's going to make sure that he's not putting a player at risk with it because he's testing, he's evaluating, and he's using it with pitch design. He's using it with training programs. He's using it with his high school team that he coaches. So I kind of want to turn it over and give Lou a small introduction there. But Lou, if you don't mind giving a little more background on yourself, and yeah, go ahead.
okay. My name's Lou Kolasky. I'm with National Pitching under Tom House Sports umbrella. I coach any type of thrower, quarterback, uh, baseball, softball, and of course, pitching is my niche. Um, I'm 55, soon to be 56 years old. I still play baseball in a 25 league here in Akron, Ohio. So I get to use the dynamometer myself and ArmCare products. Also run a facility here in Akron, Ohio, out of AB Pitching right now. Um, and I go through a ton of players, athletes that come in, and as you know, we use this quite a bit.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So, Lou, why don't we just start with just general how are you using it?
Okay. Well, I have several ways, and first of all, I picked it up because we were testing it as national pitching. Wanted to look at it for a couple of my pitchers. It before I could actually use the product with them, I had to learn it. So I figured I'd try to test myself, seeing that I still throw a little bit. And it's funny because I had lifted that day thinking that I just run a test and then show the individual players that night. And what I found was my the relative score for my body type, size and weight was pretty despicable. It was terrible. So one thing I learned right away is don't lift before you use it. And I think I lifted in the morning, and then of course 8 hours later I was trying to push as hard as I could into the wall, and it didn't work very well. But I used it personally first, then started a small test run with just a couple players. Um, and then I started using it in season, out of season, some customized use, uh, more when I got to know the product a little bit better. And as Jordan said, I literally ask question after question after question. I'm one of these guys that can't stand not knowing something after looking at a stat or something. I'm like, how can I improve either my athlete or my coaching performance so I can relay that so they get value out of what they're paying me for. So one of the things I use it for is personally. So I learned about myself that when I first got on there, I was functionally weak for where I needed to be, um, based off of imbalances, not literally strength wise. Like I had the strength, but I was kind of shifted a little bit more backside than I was internal rotation, which was kind of funny because everybody else I coach, I may see one or two internal rotation weakness or imbalances, but mainly uh, external. So I use it personally. I use it before a game. I tested myself, would throw, come back, do a post, see where I was at workload wise, and then I'm like, okay, I think I can do this. So I put together my first, I think it was 2 years ago, about 2.5 years ago, I put together my first off-season program, and I had about 54 guys coming in, and I was talking to Jordan about how am I going to implement this, because this is going to be a lot of players. None of them have dynamometers. I ponied up, and I think I bought 6 or 8 of them, and then we figured out where in the facility that we would place the test and how we would rotate them through. So ArmCare helped me figure out kind of like a staggering workflow. And I would put them in groups based off of what their tests came back as their scores. So in the off-season program, they'd warm up, they'd do their core temperature elevation, their arm care and recovery, and then their upper body mobility and flexibility. And I would then put them on the dynamometer for a test, see where they were at. If they were balanced and they had no issues where they didn't recover, because recovery is the biggest thing in our eyes, okay? I would then group them out based off of if they had group 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 3 being right in the middle, balanced. 1 would be a warning with external, and then 2 would be a watch external, and then balanced. And then I do the same thing with the internal rotation. And then I would have them go through their throws. If they weren't recovered, I'd knock them down basically 30% on what their throwing routine would be. And then I'd put them on a training program that would help them balance out and get stronger. So depending on what we actually did that day for what their velocity programs were, I could base that off of their strength. Now, we used to use something prior to the dynamometer, which I still do in my screen tests. We'll poke and prod on the back and figure out where somebody is functionally weak. Plus, we'll ask them, are you stiff or sore? When did you pitch last? When you pitching again? When did you lift? And then, what are you going to do today? What do you want to do? So we basically did that as the organic way. And I would find out if I had good communication with the player, and they would trust me, and they would tell me, yeah, Coach Lou, I'm a little sore. I threw, or I lifted. A lot of times guys will try to tell you, well, I lifted a little bit. And I'm like, okay, get on, go do a fresh exam. And I'll find that they're weak. Okay. And I'm like, you lifted yesterday, right? So I've also seen it in a high school setting where guys wanted to pen that day, and they lifted in the morning or in the afternoon. I'm like, I'm telling you right now, you're supposed to throw X amount today. I guarantee you're not going to get through that. So I'm going to back you off about 30%. And then they swear, oh, no, I want to do that amount. I'm like, let's get up on the mound and let's see. And we'll take a look at it. And they get up there, and literally they'd be 5 miles an hour off their fastball immediately. Okay. They'd hang around there for about 4 pitches. And then I'd see them literally dip to almost 10 miles an hour. And that's on guys who considered light lifting. All right, guys that did heavy lifting, I wouldn't even pitch them because they would fail everything. So we have the personal use. The in season was a little bit about, what I was doing with the high school team. I would actually use the dynamometer testing once a week. We had rotation, so I started 5-day rotation, and I'd put our conference games were on Tuesday and Wednesday. So Monday or Tuesday, I'd have those pitchers do an exam, a fresh exam, and then as we went through the week, the other guys would go and add. So they were always rotating in. So I tracked that. After they would do their testing, I could also tell what they were going to do throwing wise, because I used a pitch logic ball to have them bullpen. Okay. And I could tell guys that were not fresh, that had a little bit of, muscle strength loss, or they were still fatigued, because that happened too. I could tell in what was happening with the pitch logic ball, because their release point was different, and they started losing their arm slot, and I started seeing difference in arm slot and spin.
Yep.
And then basically I could adjust and say, hey, look, I think he's going to be a 2 inning guy. We're going to have to get somebody else in there to get warmed up just to make sure. Getting custom use wise, this is what was really cool. This is after I was out in Colorado with Jordan and National Pitching Clinic, and we were talking about how to use the custom training strength with the dynamometer. And I really like that as far as using the ISO and the presses just to build for strength. So I was doing all kinds of different positions that we don't normally do in our testing, which was kind of cool. And I just started tracking this, and this has been about a week, and I don't have enough data to tell you exactly what's happening with it. But there are a lot of the isometrics that we do inside of National Pitching's warm-ups and the flexibility and recovery program. So I'm testing those. So as soon as I find out, maybe we'll do another podcast or something with that, because I think that's going to be pretty neat.
So what you're seeing is, just to kind of give a quick summary of it, is when you're looking at the strength data, it's giving you a good understanding of, number one, how long that pitcher is going to last in an outing. Number
Yes.
two, how their stuff's going to look and how consistent they're going to be. And then number three, you're using this also to help dial in to determine, am I programming it enough on your guys' side of it with the isometric work, the customized training through the ArmCare app? Are we doing enough to get this player back to that full strength, or ideally a little stronger than he was going into his last outing? So we want to keep seeing that trend line up.
Yes.
We don't want to get stagnant, and 100% we don't want to go down. I just want to make sure I summarized your thoughts well enough. Okay,
yeah, and if I missed anything, just stop me and ask. Really, what it comes down to is I'm looking to make sure the player's not fatigued, okay, and the strength and balance is happening correctly, because you can only excel what you can decelerate. So it's one of those things where I got to make sure, we're a health first organization. Velocity comes as a cross specificity throwing program. So we're building strength along with our movements and patterning. And if somebody's not getting that and has a fast arm, there's a good possibility that they get hurt. So I want to make sure that nobody's going to get hurt.
Yeah, and then you're going over that recovery. And one thing I kind of want to get into just a little bit, just touch on it a little bit, is our sensors just not only testing the strength of the arm, but that's obviously, it's going to be related to nervous system fatigue as well. You're going to know kind of how that nervous system is bouncing back. And me and Lou probably spent 12 hours together in a car a couple of weeks ago, driving all over California. He came with me to visit some coaches, whole bunch of stuff. It was a good trip out in San Diego.
Awesome.
But we talked a ton on the nervous system. And one of the things I've been doing with my guys is, when their strength's up, I just monitor whether it's like, how was this guy's practice session for the day? How was his, training? Was his drill work good? Was his throwing program good? What did it look like when he's down a little bit off the average, or if he's triggering some warnings, different things like that, watches? How was this practice session? Is it like a sloppy practice session? And what I've seen is, as that strength is up, generally I'm just grading on like bad, good, or great. I'm giving like a 3 options that I'm going to kind of keep track of. When their strength is down, it's generally a bad practice session. We're not getting very good reps. When their strength is average, it's like, yeah, it was normal. And then when its strength is up, it's generally a good practice session. They're throwing more strikes. Their breaking ball is a lot. They're getting better reps on that breaking ball. So for me, one of the ways I like to use it also is when they're good. And there's a book that I like, The Performance Cortex. We were talking about it a little bit before. It's an older book, but it goes over myelination. And myelin is just wrapping that nerve in that nice insulated jacket, in a sense. And there's a whole bunch of other books that go into that as well. But what I've seen is, when my guys are higher strength, I'm assuming, again, I don't have the research on this. Maybe Bart will write the check, so we'll do it. Probably not, but probably only be like $500,000 research project.
Sure.
But I'm guessing that when their strength is higher, we're able to wrap the myelin a little bit better, because we're getting better reps. It seems like their brain is just triggering those responses a lot faster. And when you're asking them to learn something, it might take 2 or 3 reps for them to get it, as opposed to when they're at average strength or below, it's just not happening on that day. So I like to use it to dictate my practice reps. Have you done anything on that, or anything you want to throw in there?
Yeah, I could go a bunch of directions here, but I think the first thing I want to say before I get into this is windows of trainability. Okay, because from 6 to 13, which is basically when puberty happens, you're in a patterning nervous system mode. Okay, and you're not going to gain any muscle mass because you don't have testosterone. So when you hit 13 to 19, you get into this pre-testosterone to testosterone, you start growing. Now you got to make sure that you're doing training because you got to get stronger. But you don't have the nervous system and the nerves, the brain to muscle connection yet. Because you're going to be a different person every day until you're done growing. Guys that are 6'3", 6'4" and up get a little bit, take a little bit longer, up to like 22, 23. And then you're going to have the skill window. So I'm looking at anybody from 20 to 32 that is going to have fully developed neurologically, and that we're making sure that they are integrating what we're teaching. So if I look at, and then of course there's skill retention, which is basically after 32. Guys like me, 55, maybe 56. I'm still trying to do everything pattern, train, and then integrate. So the biggest thing is if I got a kid that's under 12, okay, or 13, it's puberty, I'm not really going to do anything strength wise other than general calisthenics, that type of stuff, right? But then once they get into the weight room, they're getting stronger. Yes. Now, when we're talking about making them functional for pitching, I'm looking for things that are like what we're talking about here. So the guys that I work with in my off-season program, the pro workouts, are anywhere from high school guys and up. So I just want to say that, because you got to remember, for every inch that you grow, okay, you're going to be set back 2 months neurologically, okay, compared to your chronological age. So if you're 13, right, and you grow 2 inches or 3 inches, you're actually going to be 6 months behind. So we have to train according to what their biological age is, and that's we look at pitch counts too, at their biological age, not their chronological age. So when you get a high school guy in 15 and up, you can usually bank on what you're saying as far as practicing. They're down a little bit. Neurologically, I see fatigue neurologically in this, along with strength, and we'll have issues where a guy is just going too much, and not throwing, but between lifting, practice, throwing, school, any other physical activity. Some guys overwork, thinking that they're doing themselves doing better, and what happens is they really are wearing their body down, and they're not recovering. So nervous system fatigue is huge, and you can get that stagnation, and then you got to back everything off. You're like, okay, you've hit the wall. We're going to take and drop you down 30% across the board on your lifting, on your performance, on your playing, whatever it is that you're working on for baseball, and just kind of get you back into relaxing and recovering. And really what it comes down to is recovery. You got to have sleep, you got to have nutrition and hydration first. Those are the number one tools. Once you get that in order, then we can work on other things. But I see guys that throw over the season, they start out high strength gain, and then they kind of diminish. But we have a formula for using foot pounds out of the arm that we use. That we got to put foot pounds back in the arm, and foot pounds is just basically measuring energy, 1 pound moving it 1 foot. So when we see that calculation, we kind of know what we're going to do to put the energy back in the arm. But sometimes we put the energy back in the arm, and I'm still seeing that slide of either mechanical efficiency or strength loss. And a lot of times it's because they're being overworked. And I do see that. I do see that quite a bit. And then some of it's endurance. Some of it's endurance too. So we have to look at what part of that is happening neurologically, and compare full tests, you know, with what they're doing, and just monitoring and making sure they're not declining in the dashboard, basically. And if I'm seeing recovery and then drop and recovery and drop, and it's going down, those are red flags. They don't even have to be out of the blue. I start calling you, right? It's like,
Yep.
okay, hey, you know, but you know, some of these, I've done these so much now with guys in or athletes in the facility, that I can tell a lot of different scenarios based off of experience now, which is good, because you helped me get there, you know, along with a few other coaches that are using this product. You know, we got Robert Ambrose and Dean Dox and Doxkis, and then who else? You got Greg Wright. I think most of our guys now are using it. Mike Fetko is using it. So it's one of those things where we rely on it because it allows us to get a broad spectrum of use case, as far as, hey, how are they responding, and how are they recovering, and are they ready to go full tilt on a velo program? Now, I've seen this on velo programs too, right? I spent a lot of time, about 4 months actually, on velo programs, and I'll see guys just rising. I'll say, bam, and they won't plateau and then rise again, which is good. What they'll do is they'll go, and then all of a sudden they're falling, so it's looking like a mountain. And then that's when I got to figure. And usually, what happens, you know, from my perspective, is what I see is they start their training with their other coaches in their summer ball team before high school starts. And when that happens, then we're talking about, you know, nervous system, because now they're just going too much.
One thing I want to point out also, and Lou's kind of been a little bashful on talking around it, but you had how many of the top pitchers in the state?
Well, I had 3 throw in Division I championship game. I had 2 in the Division II Final Four. I think there were 10 all conference, either pitcher or player of the year. It was pretty cool. Out of the program that I had last year, there were, I believe it was 18 guys that threw over 86 as juniors.
Yeah, so I want to highlight that, because this isn't something that happens by accident. And Lou like I said, he's being bashful, kind of talking around it on how much he actually uses stuff to develop players and dial things in individually. But just keep in mind, like, these are guys that have been working with Lou for a long time, and he keeps learning, he keeps growing, he keeps asking those questions. So if you are looking for a coach in the Midwest, it's a good place to start with, because he's going to be with you for a while. He's going to make sure your athletes are recovered. He's, you know, not going to be able to stop everything that's going to occur, because they're playing for multiple teams, maybe playing in college, whatever it is. But he is a good lifeline to help you understand how to use that ArmCare data to build into your own program. So when he kicks you out of the nest, you at least know how to fly on your own. So I kind of wanted to touch on that a bit, because, you know, I don't think you did a great job of highlighting how many good players you actually have that you work with, and how much better they're getting, and how you're dialing in those individual programs. Like I said, Lou's going to be bashful. I'm not. I'm gonna highlight it. I'm gonna make sure people know. Bart, you got anything you wanted to add in there?
No, I mean, having someone like Lou aware of what's going on is really important. I mean, you talked about the example of someone who's kind of gradually declining in their performance, and you know, the ArmCare app's great for finding watches and warnings and things when there's kind of big changes. But we've made some adjustments to the app and stuff to try to find those gradual declines. If someone's testing a lot and they're just kind of slowly declining, it may be a neurological thing, and it takes someone looking at the data, looking at the trends, to say, hey, there's something going on here where, you know, it may not be enough to quite trigger a watch or a warning, to highlight that. And so having someone like Lou watching out for these players is very important. So, you know, yeah, definitely, if you're in in the Ohio area, it's a good place to start.
Yeah,
So Lou, where can we find you if someone's
well,
listening to this and they want to go
okay.
look you up?
You can find me on National Pitching under the Great Lakes region. Okay. Under the coaches. You can also contact me through Lou at npagreatlakes.com. That's personal email. If you have any questions or you need help with ArmCare, as far as the dynamometer and how I'm reading or how I'm using it, contact me. If you need help with pitching or sleep, recovery, nutrition, BELO programs, anything that has to do with athlete that you're trying to keep healthy, just feel free to contact myself and or any of the national pitching coaches, because we got a great group of guys.
That's awesome. Jordan, you got any other points you want to hit on today?
That's it.
Awesome. Well, Lou, I definitely think we need to have you back on when you get these other things that you're working on a little farther along. But until now, I just want to say thanks for having you, and you guys have a great day.
All right. Thank you.